The Floyd Rose original trem or the Ibanez Edge? Which one's better? Some claim these are the best tremolos on the market, but how are they different and which one is the best for you? In this episode, we're going to compare these two top tier tremolos, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised who wins top dog. This is the Axe Guitar Show. Let's go. All right, guys, welcome back to the Axe Guitar Show, your one-stop shop for tremolo tips and tricks and, occasional guitar humor. I can only be so funny. But I hope you all are doing well. It's that time of the year. At this time of the video, I think we're deep into the holiday season at about 3 days till Christmas. So I know some of you are getting your last-minute shopping done and getting ready for an enjoyable, relaxing holiday, which you do 100% deserve. This year has been crazy. I'm sure all of you have been working hard, and I'd love for you guys to just enjoy it. But anyway, that are new, my name is Nick, and today we're going to cover a topic that's all over Reddit threads. We're going to compare two trems that, people are very opinionated about. If you look at the specs and the actual materials, you could, kind of conclude one thing, but then a lot of people say something about the other. Which one's better? And what we're talking about is the tried and true, which some claim is the best trem ever made and still is the original Floyd Rose, right? The Mac Daddy, the original. Or is it the Ibanez Edge, which is a huge crowd favorite and what some claim is the best tremolo on the market in recent years? And once we start talking about these trems, you'll kind of see, how they're made is one thing, but how they're actually designed and how they play is another. So in the studio today, we actually have these trems. We have the Ibanez Edge, which is attached and installed to my Ibanez RG Genesis 550 in the back. We'll have tons of pictures and videos to look at. And then also we have this one that hasn't been installed, but this is the Floyd Rose original, the most recent model, the one they started to do without the stamp and the CNC milling, and we'll talk about this in this video. Now, per usual for all of these podcasts, we're going to go into depth in regards to the materials of these tremolos, where and how they're made, and then their overall performance, how they play, what people say about them, whether they like how they feel, things of that nature, which is important because you can have materials, you can have how these are made, and then how a player responds to them, right? Now, there are subtle and at the same time big differences between these two tremolos that might tip the scale between one, which one is actually better, and two, which is the best for you. Any guitarist knows that these two things can be the exact same or extremely different. But I've actually made it easy for you guys by including timestamps in the description so you can navigate to the right topic of what you want to hear, and then you can also hop back and forth or fast forward to, the section you want to check out. Anything to make your viewing experience more enjoyable because I love you, I'm here for you. Now, before we get into the juicy info, if you like the content, consider subscribing below so you don't miss any tremolo tips and tricks and budget guitar gear reviews. We also do a lot of giveaways, so keep that in mind. So getting into the meat and potatoes of today's conversation, we're really comparing the original Floyd Rose with the Ibanez Edge Tremolo. So these trems have been used by many, some famous guitarists for decades, right? They're a favorite for many of our favorite shredders and players. The Floyd Rose being on the market a little longer as it's the original Mac Daddy of double locking floating tremolos. Now, these are both Fulcrum style tremolos, meaning that they have pivot points on each side of the device with these knife edges, these very fine kind of milled down knife edges on the base plate of the trem. And then those sit at a pivot point, which are balanced by the string tension on the top of the guitar, and on the bottom of the guitar, it's balanced by spring tension. So those need to be equal to provide that fulcrum and then allow you to use the tremolo to dip or pull up and then for it to return to tuning, to position, right? We all know a good trem and a good setup on a guitar, whenever you use the tremolo, it will return back to its exact tuning and position. If you have any trouble with your tremolo, doesn't stay in tune, it goes sharp or it goes flat when you use it, go ahead and reach out to me on Instagram. I love helping you out on that platform. Now let's get right into the materials of these bad boys because they really do differ quite a bit in this regard. And this is kind of surprising to a lot of people because these two are really good tremolos, really well-made tremolos with pretty good longevity. But then when you hear the differences in the material, people are like, really? So the original Floyd Rose is really known for a couple things. The fact that it's made with hardened steel and that it's handcrafted in Germany. Those are the two real, I'd say, highlights that really offer, in terms of construction, the value to the original Floyd Rose. So for years, as everyone is abreast to, the original Floyd Rose, not the 1000 series or the specials. Those are made in Korea and China, but the original Floyd has been made in Germany by a company called Schaller, however you want to pronounce it. And Schaller has been making these for Floyd Rose, and that's always spoke to like the original's overall quality. You know, we've really come to get used to the fact that it has a made in Germany stamp on the back and that they're made by Schaller. Schaller uses hardened steel on the base plate of the original Floyd Rose, the saddles, and even the hardware, which really yields a very strong tremolo that has great longevity, and here's why. Most notably, since all the components are around the same density because they're basically all hardened steel, right? You get far less stripping of the threads and overall, wear of the threads like on the saddle block, or where these hex bolts adhere the saddles to the base plate, or even the fine tuners. I mean, these are steel. And then the thing is, these can strip over time as well. So because they're the same steel and they're the same kind of density, since you have two things rubbing against each other in the threading, they do last a little bit longer than, say, a hardened steel screw going into a zinc alloy block. So that speaks to the quality of the materials of the original Floyd Rose. Now, something also to consider is the Floyd Rose original comes with a nickel-plated brass tremolo block, as opposed to the more budget versions like the 1000 series or the special, which comes with a zinc alloy block, which really does diminish the overall sustain of the tremolo and then consequently the actual guitar. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people switch these thinner tremolo blocks out with fat brass blocks. It really does help with the sustain. All right, and lastly, I don't mean this to be like a tease or a cliffhanger, but there is some juicy info that, Floyd Rose has told me I cannot discuss at this moment. But Floyd Rose has dropped some subtle clues about the future of original Floyd Rose manufacturing, and it starts with manufacturing hardened steel saddles with different radii in the USA, specifically in the state of North Carolina. You can use your inductive reasoning to kind of guess what Floyd Rose is signaling and what they have in store for us in the future. I'm going to leave it at that. There will be some breaking news that comes out on the channel and on the Floyd Rose website in the form of a press release. Keep your eye out for that. All right, now let's step to the side and take a look at the Ibanez Edge, which many of you know or don't know. The Ibanez Edge is actually made in Japan. I mean, makes sense. Ibanez is originally a Japanese company, but it's made in Japan by Goto for Ibanez. The makers of the GE1996T, yep, the beloved Japanese tremolo, they manufacture the Edge for Ibanez guitars. Super important to know, as you're kind of limited with Ibanez guitars in regards to tremolos. They really only come with Ibanez branded trems like your Edge Pro, the Low Pro, all those Edge variations. But it gives you some peace of mind that they are constructed, the Ibanez Edge Tremolo, that they're constructed by a reputable brand such as Goto. Now listen up, this is where it gets pretty interesting. The Edge is made a little differently than the original Floyd Rose. For starters, the base plate and the body are made with pot metal, not actual hardened steel, like the whole base plate of the original Floyd Rose. And yeah, pot metal, which is a weaker alloy, which is used a lot in, what's a good example? Like Hot Wheel toys, like the bottom of the Hot Wheel toys, kind of that melted alloy. Kind of cheaper toys use pot metal. Kind of wild, right? But have no fear, because the Edge has quality materials where you need it, in my opinion. The knife edges are inserts. They actually insert. You can look on the side and there's a little opening where you can see where the knife edge was inserted. These inserts are hardened steel and last for just about forever on that pivot point, which is really where you want the really good hardened steel and quality materials. Now, the Edge also has steel saddles and steel screws, preventing a lot of that stripping that we talked about with the mix and densities. Same densities, should last a while. Now, a big difference between the Edge and the original Floyd Rose is that the Edge uses a zinc alloy tremolo block stock. That's what it comes with. It comes with a zinc tremolo block, which isn't the best But a positive, like we talked about, is that many manufacturers make aftermarket brass blocks and fat brass blocks. In fact, FU Tone, if you go to, I think it's futone.com, they make a fat brass block for several different tremolos out there, including the Ibanez Edge. So you can quickly swap this zinc alloy trem block out. You might not need to. I think the trem itself performs very well, but if you want to add some actual sustain, you do have that option. So the moral of the story is that the original Floyd Rose is all hardened steel with a brass block, while the Ibanez Edge has hardened steel kind of where you need it on the knife edges and the saddles with a zinc alloy block and that pot metal body. So, if we're going to get really granular here, I mean, the original Floyd Rose takes the cake in this department easily. It's got all the hardened steel, probably a little better like longevity. So if that's something you're overly concerned about, there you go. Hey guys, just a quick break to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Humanoid Effects guitar pedals. Guys, I love these handmade pedals made right here in North Carolina, and I love them because Humanoid really pours their blood, sweat, and tears into their products, meaning you get unique guitar tone every time. And I want to give you exclusive discounts, so listen up. I use the Humanoid Apparition, which is a high-gain turbo distortion that, I'm serious when I tell you this, gives me the best thrash and searing lead tones that I need in my playing. Now, you can save 25%, yeah, you heard me right, 25% on all Humanoid pedals by using the link in the description and show notes, or use the code THEAXE at checkout. You won't find another deal like this on handcrafted, custom-made pedals, so go check out humanoidfx.com today. Now, moving on to the design and the construction of these tremolos, they are super similar in their overall functionality, but actually differ in several ways that a lot of people aren't really abreast to. They just kind of look at these two tremolos side by side, and it's like, oh, they look pretty similar, but that's not really the case. Starting with the Floyd Rose Original, this bad boy comes with upright fine tuners, meaning the tuners are kind of parallel to the body. You can see here that they're parallel with the saddles and the actual base plate. And then if you flip this bad boy over, you have this housing that can screw on and off. And this is for the actual screw-on tremolo arm that goes on the trem and it actually attaches directly to the base plate. Floyd Rose recently updated this tremolo arm housing, getting rid of the small hex screw that you loosen through the back. And if you took this Floyd Rose off, you could take it off that way. But it was cumbersome. It was a small screw with kind of like a retaining clip. The screw was about the same size as the screws at the nut that you'd use to actually lock down the strings. Now, this housing is actually bigger, which may pose a problem for smaller, tight guitar routings. So your rear cavity route, if it's really tight, this thing's a little bit bigger, so it could prevent the Floyd Rose from actually achieving its full range of motion when you're using the tremolo. Now, overall, this is less cumbersome of a housing. It's got this big thing you just take off right here that has a hex screw on the bottom. If you want to take this off to replace with a push-in tremolo arm, I think this is a little bit easier to navigate than the old housing with the hex screw. Now, if we go to the saddles of the original Floyd Rose, they're kind of blocky. There's no beveled edges or anything. The saddle wells are CNC machined, which is now why the wells have those round corners. Like there's not right angles in here. They kind of have rounded corners in the wells. And those round internal corners, you have these rounded actual saddle blocks as well. This is something Schaller just started doing with the manufacturing of their Floyds. Using CNC doesn't really allow you to make those right angles internally when you machine them, because it uses a very small circular blade or bit to actually route out the saddles, which, there's a little bit of controversy on this. That will come out probably in that Juicy Info press release in the future. So now if we go over to the Ibanez Edge, in regards to like construction and design, this is where it really shines. The Edge has more ergonomic fine tuners. They're more oriented to the back of the tremolo. It has a pop-in tremolo arm, and the saddle construction is a little bit different than the original Floyd Rose. All right, first things first. If you notice, you'll see that these fine tuners on the Ibanez Edge aren't parallel to the body, kind of like the original Floyd Rose, right? In my opinion, they are way more out of the way and give your picking hand a little bit more room. Ultimately, this makes the Edge a little bit more low profile when compared to the original Floyd, and I feel like that's the theme of the Edge, is like comfort, because when you look at the saddles of the Edge they have the beveled corners, which are a lot less blocky than the original Floyd. Also, if you look at the saddle wells, these are more angular, like the inside have right angles, because these aren't CNC'd. The Ibanez Edge saddles are actually casted and produced that way. Now, one of the stark differences between the Ibanez Edge and the original Floyd Rose is that the Edge has a pop-in tremolo arm, which, you either love it or you hate it. Some people shy away from it. They don't want to touch a pop-in arm. And then some people switch out and modify their tremolos to have nothing but pop-in arms. But this pop-in arm on the Ibanez Edge is fairly easy to remove and replace. But one of its interesting quirks is that it uses plastic bushings to provide the friction to not only keep the tremolo arm in the housing, but to keep it from spinning around. These bushings tend to get loose and they tend to wear, just like any plastic. If it's, under friction, it'll wear down. But the good thing is these white little bushings, there's 2 of them there, are replaceable at a pretty cheap cost on eBay. You go on Amazon, they might be marked up a little bit because it is kind of like a specialty item. But on eBay, I found them for about $2, $3, $4, which I probably replace my bushings maybe every 2 years. So it's really not that exorbitant of a cost. Lucky for you, if you have an Ibanez Edge, I did a video on how to change these bushings out. I'll put a card at the top and a link in the description. But one last thing on the trim block for the Ibanez Edge is that this comes with a spring retainer bar. You see those 2 screws? This keeps the springs on the actual tremolo block, which the Floyd Rose doesn't have this. So I think it goes without saying that the Ibanez Edge does take the cake in regards to its overall design and construction. But the Floyd probably has better materials that would likely give you a little more longevity in your tremolo. In my opinion, and it is a hard choice, it really is, because I feel like these trims are both great in their own ways, but I would probably give the nod to the Ibanez Edge if I had to choose. I really believe that it has the right materials where you need it. So you have hardened steel knife edges, you have great saddles, and you have the hardware that you'd need for it. But the big thing is the construction and the overall design. I like how the fine tuners are kind of oriented to the back, giving it a low pro kind of feel. Love the beveled saddles, and I'm a fan of pop-in tremolo. And in my opinion, this is anecdotal, that's why we didn't really cover it in the meat and potatoes. I feel like the Ibanez Edge responds better and is a way more fluid tremolo when you use it. All right, guys, that's the end of the show. Really enjoyed having you here. Hit subscribe below so you don't miss any more content. And also rate and review this podcast if you're listening to it on audio on whatever platform you use.